Hi, I'm Naomi Grant and welcome to my time-lapse video of my portrait of Lloyd and his two dogs. Hope you enjoy watching how I've actually created this painting. As you can see here, I've blown up the image to the scale of the canvas and I've traced it onto paper, and now I've actually traced it onto the canvas. And now you can see that I'm mixing up and preparing all my colours before I start painting. Fairly important to get all your paints laid out and sorted as to what you're going to do before you start applying paints. Now this painting is actually in acrylic paint, and the painting in size is actually 20 by 30 inches. So you can see I've roughed in the background colour first, then I've put my design onto the painting, and what I'm doing here is I'm blocking in the whites of the canvas and the darks, so establishing some tonal values and roughing in the dog right there and roughing in the background, and you can see Lloyd is still just in chalk line as we start to build up at different areas around the painting. So I'm working on his hat here just to build up the basic shapes. And there's a lot of layers that has to happen as you're building a painting, so just your first pass isn't going to be the finished result. So I've started on his face, and you can see I put the reference photo in the corner, building up the tones and the textures, having a bit closer look up, getting his eyes and nose and mouth, working in very fine brush. This looks quick, but it actually took a long time, so now I'm just like got his face roughly in there. But I'll have to come back and work more of this later, but you don't want to do one thing in isolation before you build other things around it. So I'm reasonably happy with how his face has transpired and with sort of big basic blocks and shapes that are moving along. And so now I'm going to start working on his shirt. So I'm outlining all the basic details of the shirt, then blocking in the darks to sort of just to give us sort of a tonal value, the colour in a sort of like a bluey grey. Then coming back with some more darks over it, and then starting to add highlights and to develop a bit of form, shadow, shape, curves, wrinkles in the shirt itself. You can see it's starting to take a little bit more shape. And then I thought, no, I'm not quite happy with that. So I've, again, working back and adjusting, blocked out the strap that he's got over his shoulder, realigning some of the wrinkles and shapes on his shirt as we go along. So it takes quite a lot of layers and process of building, and then I've applied his strap there and his pocket. I made some details more. So I'm fairly happy with that for the moment. So then I've started to work on his trousers. Again, blocking in sort of roughly the mid-tones of his legs, and then starting with some darker colours to define the seams and the patterns and the shapes on his jeans. Then adding more highlights. So it's a process of constantly looking for the highlights, looking for the lowlights as we go along and building that up. Working in the background there through his chair. So here I've come back to the background on the right hand side and starting to build in the water tanks and the timber and all the areas that's sitting in the background of the painting on the property, because you don't want to just create one area in isolation. Everything relates to everything, so you have to build up the picture consistently together as I'm working around the painting. I don't want to finish off Lloyd until I've got a lot of things in balance. So now I've come back to the tree, whereas we've just got the rough colour and some shapes, and I'm now starting to build up the main leaves and details in the branch on the trees. Again, just first pass, looking at the shapes and the tonal values, blocking that in, starting to make it feel like it's a little bit more of a tree. And as I starting to put finer twigs and leaves onto the other side of the area where I painted in the background, so that I can actually paint over that. You don't want to try and paint the background first. Now you can see I'm building up the leaf structure that's on this side of the painting on top of the background areas where I had done previously, and starting to build up some tone and shape with the leaves, modelling lights, darks, medium tones. It takes quite a while to really build up the volume of colour that gives you this, you know, sense of reality in 3D in the leaves and in everything that you're actually looking at. And there's just a quick shot as we're starting to come in with the trees. And again, coming back to that background area, looking at more detail, refining areas in that background area, adding in some few more structures, lights and shadows, leaves, finery, all these things, all the little details and things that start to build the picture into a more complete scene. Now coming back to the other side of the painting, because as we've gone along now, where I had the darks and I put the dark of the dog on the other side, now I have to build up the darks on where the tree branches are to correspond more with the picture, and refining the shape of the poodle down here on one side of Lloyd, and starting to build up the tree trunks and the branches with a little bit more reality to them. At the moment they're just really basic. And now I'm putting in the foreground branches as I've done the depth behind, and starting to build highlights and a few shadows and patterns and shapes into the branches in the foreground here to try and make them feel more realistic, and building in the cane chair that Lloyd is sitting in. So things are starting to progress. Coming back to the leaves, now I'm starting to build more highlights and build more lights into the background. You can see I've added more sky in, creating more lights on the wood. Now, very quickly that hand looked like it just appeared, but I can assure you it actually took a while modelling his hand shapes, working a bit more on the dog, and building a bit more form and depth into his fur and his shape, and now starting to build in the underground part of the seat and the background that Lloyd is sitting on. Looking through that, creating some more depth there, and highlights on the cane chair. A little bit more detail on his trousers. It's a constant process of refining and working on each area and balancing them out as you build another area, because everything will affect everything. Now I'm doing the background area behind the dog and just behind standing on, sort of building up that ground shape. Grass, foliage, dirt, and now I'm going to start to work on the dog. The dog has been an interesting journey. Quite a bit of effort has gone into Lloyd's dog here. So here's my first go. And the interesting thing, you know, when you're doing a painting, not everything goes exactly right the first time. It's a constant process of looking, readjusting, seeing the shapes for what they really are, seeing that, oh no, I didn't get that quite right, so redoing it. And he's starting to take shape. So then I've realised that he needs a little bit more modelling and readjusting in his tones and in his proportions. So I've had another go at working on the dog. The dog I found to be quite a challenge, and in fact I actually had to go at his face 3 times before I felt like I had really got it to as close as I felt that I was satisfied with it. So not everything just goes, you know, bang, right the very first time you paint it, but it's like layers and a process of building up and developing the piece until you feel happy with it. And again, I've come back and adjusted the face a bit more here, a bit more modelling on the side and building up his fur and the patterns and the tones and the texture on his fur as we work, and then working the ground as well. So Now just come back to the poodle dog on the other side, just trying to get a little bit more volume in his fur, and also going back over the hand now to refine it, to give it a little bit more shape and detail. Because as things get more and more refined, often things at the first or second pass may not be good enough by the time you've got down to the final sort of look. Again, touching up the leaves and the wood branches, adding some more darks, coming back to his face, giving a little bit more depth to his eyes and the skin tone, a bit more shadows and shapes, working over that, so that he's in contrast with the dog as well. A little bit more definition, working on his hat, giving that a little bit more shape and definition too. Okay, we've got down to the final point now, where I'm just adding some final fine lines and touches with some Gouda pens. This is what I usually sign my name with, just adding a few highlights and twigs and lines and accents, just to sort of make a bit of focus on a few points in the painting. And now we've got to the final piece. You can just see the completed painting. I'm very happy with it. It's taken quite a lot of time, even though we've actually got only 16 minutes of your time here in viewing. But thank you for taking the time and effort to actually watch it. I do hope that you enjoyed seeing how I actually created this painting. And stay tuned for some more examples down the track. Thank you very much. Bye for now. Hi, I'm Naomi, and I really appreciate that you took a few minutes to watch my latest video. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd love it if you'd like to hit the button and leave me some comments. And if you'd like to hit the notification bell, you'll get notified when new videos come out. Also, if you're interested in seeing more of my work, jump on over to my site at naomigrant.com. Again, thanks very much for taking a few minutes. Bye for now.